Hello, my name is Xavier Mercado, and this is Spearhead Conversations. Today, I'm joined by special guest Elizabeth Kay, known to Milwaukee from Elizabeth and Radar, the morning show. She's a woman with over 20 years of experience in radio.
That makes me sound so old.
But I've been a listener since way back, and I've been a fan. And I've just admired the woman she has been and the voice she has been to the city. I reached out recently, and she replied, and she said yes. So without further ado, how you doing, Kay?
Hey, I know, right? My fellow Southsider. Yeah. We connect on that. South Milwaukee, Bayview. Yeah. Well, I'm thrilled to be talking with you because you are really starting a movement with these conversations in your podcast. Yeah. And to even be considered is really an honor. So thank you for taking the time to be here and chat with me.
I do appreciate you coming out. Like I said, I've been listening for decades. And, I just admire it. It's, when you wake up in the early hours like I do and you're on your way to work, you need that energy. And just the energy you exude, like it puts energy into my day. So I definitely got to say it. I admire you. I admire the work you do, and I love it. You're here for the hometown.
Thank you. It's fun though, and I feel like if you don't love what you're doing, you're wasting precious time here on Earth. And I do not take for granted doing this in my hometown. When you and I talked on the phone, I talked about how growing up, I had a paper route. I delivered the Milwaukee Journal. For sure. And then when it became the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel, I was doing that before school in the morning with my dad, getting up, delivering the paper. And I just remember thinking about how when you get up early in the morning, it sounds cheesy, but there's always opportunity because you have a whole day ahead of you to do whatever you'd like with your day, make good choices, check things off your to-do list,
for sure.
And just be excited about the opportunity that the day brings. And now I think about how I'm still in a way doing that for Milwaukee. Before it was the newspaper when I was growing up, but now it's through radio.
It's the passion. You got it.
I love it. It's fun. And I'm going to do it as long as they'll keep me around and as long as I'm still having fun.
Well, we're here today to find out who is Elizabeth Kay. All right. You ready to jump in?
Yeah.
All right. So where were you born?
Well, St. Joe's Hospital, if we're going to get real local.
Nice.
St. Joe's. My mom worked there for over 40 years as an OR tech, and it was the baby hospital. Yeah. So we all were born at St. Joe's. And then at the time, my parents, they had a 3-family house that they owned on Homer Street in KK, right behind the Avalon, which was next door to the house that my dad grew up in, that my aunt and uncle then had. So yes, but Bayviewer, that was where they brought me home. I lived at that house on Homer Street. And then when I was 2, we moved to Bayview off of KK in Oklahoma.
Nice.
And on Fernwood, which I have a tattoo of Fern.
My brother went to Fernwood.
Yes, so my sister went to Fernwood for kindergarten, and then we went to Sacred Heart of Jesus right on KK where we went. But Fernwood means a lot to me. That's why I have a tattoo with my sister and my sister's oldest of a fern. Because I love my Bayview roots. My family's all
talking
Bayview.
About Bayview, how was your childhood in Bayview?
Great. I really had a great childhood. I'm one of 4 girls, so all sisters growing up, but our cousins all lived by us, and my parents were always taking us into downtown. New Year's Eve, Harlem Globetrotters, that was our New Year's Eve tradition, and then walking to South Shore for the fireworks on the 4th of July. And I loved living in the city. I loved being there in Bayview. I mean, growing up by the lake, I like to say we were in Bayview before Bayview was cool.
Yeah.
I mean, now everyone's all about Bayview. I'm like, we were in Bayview forever. Like my grandpa was like the king of Bayview.
Yeah.
And I just think it's such a great community because you have people from all different backgrounds. You've got such a variety of restaurants. You have the beautiful lakefront. You're 7 minutes from downtown Milwaukee.
For sure.
You're not far from Chicago if you want to go down to Chicago. And we grew up in a happy home. I mean, it was a good life. It was a hardworking home, hardworking family. I mean, I talk about having a paper route.
For sure.
I had a paper route since I was 11.
She was there.
It wasn't legal then, but my cousins had a lot of routes. And they couldn't do all of the routes.
They needed help.
Yeah, so my cousin Jenny and I were like, we'll take your routes. And then they paid us cash. And then when we were 12, We got our own paper routes, which was cool. But I love it. I have such a soft spot in my heart for Bayview and the 53207.
There we go. What type of hobbies were you into? Because Bayview, like you said, a lot of restaurants, a lot of things essentially to do. What type of hobbies were you into?
We were a sports family for sure.
Okay.
My dad was really into sports, and my dad had 5 sisters and no brothers. And then he had 4 daughters.
Wow.
And no sons. And so he learned very early on that his way to connect with us was through sports.
Yeah.
We played soccer, softball, track, basketball, volleyball. We were really active in sports. And we worked. I mean, I babysat. I had the paper route. I worked at Black Tie Catering, which was right there in Oklahoma. We had jobs. And I stayed busy with that, but I was also involved in a lot of clubs growing up too. So student council, class president, co-founder of the SAD organization at Thomas More, where I went to high school. I mean, all kinds of clubs because I love people.
Yeah.
And I loved being involved. And that was also a social place for me too. I mean, back when we were growing up, we didn't have cell phones. We had one landline, and I had 3 sisters. So if I wanted to see my friends or talk to my friends, I needed to be in these clubs to be involved with all of them. But then I did get involved with First Stage Children's Theater when I was in high school. And a lot of what I learned at First Stage, I carry into this radio job.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed performing and being on a microphone and talking in front of people. And so that was a lot of what I was involved in. But then riding bikes. We would ride bikes all the time. Down to South Milwaukee. I mean, all over the place.
I love the generation I came up in, and then it's a part of yours because it wasn't there yet. The technology wasn't there, so it was really being outside, ghost in the graveyard.
Oh my gosh, ghosts in the graveyard. So the graveyard at Sacred Heart of Jesus, that was the graveyard. We'd be playing those, or kick the can, all that stuff. Well, and I talk about how like cable did exist when we grew up, but we never had cable. I didn't have cable till I got to college.
Really?
So it's like you could only watch a couple channels. That was it.
Yeah.
Every now and then we could get Channel 8, the box. Do you remember the box? And do you remember you'd have to position the TV in such a way, or the antennas? You know the songs. I saw Put 'Em on the Glass, the music video, and I'm
California
like,
Love.
What is this? But so we really didn't have much to watch on TV, so we were hanging out outside all the time. I mean, it really was when it would get dark out and the lights would come on, the street lights, you knew you'd have to go home.
For sure.
But my cousin, Jenny, we were so close. She was only a couple blocks away. And so we knew, all right, we got to get home because the lights are coming on. But that was our summers, and I loved it.
This is a great childhood. Yeah.
I loved it.
Well, you were pretty active as far as high school goes. What was your set career path going out of high school?
Broadcasting.
Broadcasting.
I used to say I wanted to be the female version of Howard Stern.
Nice. I wasn't supposed to watch that show, but guess who did?
I know, right? It really was. It was communications. It was broadcasting. I didn't know exactly what path I was going to go, but growing up in school, my parents, they had one of those old school camcorders.
Yeah, we did too.
Your dad would hold on to the shoulder, and we filmed everything. Like our whole childhood is documented on VHS tapes. Like we filmed all of it, and my cousins, they all had the camcorders, and we'd film birthday parties, we'd film Christmas, and then that night we'd watch it on the VCR, and I would do any school project I could do that I could turn into a broadcast, I would do it.
Yeah.
I did a newscast in 4th grade for Halley's Comet because that was the science project. I did fake radio shows. So I always knew I wanted to go into broadcasting very early on, but I didn't know if it was going to be television or if it was going to be radio. And I'm sure we can get into how it all came about.
Oh, for sure.
But I knew I wanted to do something in the media broadcasting space.
Well, with those years that you were in, post high school, college, what did you learn about yourselves in those years?
Resilience. Resilience. Our family got hit with quite the tragedy when I was in high school. And it took place my junior year. It was December 1998. And my cousin Jenny, who I mentioned, was my best friend. We lived 2 blocks from each other. She's 2 months older than me. She was going to her boyfriend's house that night, who was home for Christmas. He was in the Army, and I had not met him yet. And she used to work at Kohl's grocery store, right
Grocery
there on
Store.
KK.
They had one in KK and they had one in South
Yeah,
Milwaukee
right by
too.
Saigon. And my sister and I stopped in there to pick up white chocolate for my mom, who was making Christmas treats. And it was December 23rd. And she's like, hey, I'm going to Chi-Chi's with my friends by Southridge.
Yeah.
And she said, and then I'm going over to my boyfriend's house. Do you want to come? You know, you can meet him and stuff. And I was like, I don't know. I don't want to be the third wheel.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'll meet him some other time. And I'm like, you know, maybe New Year's, she was going to have a party and I would meet him or whatever. Well, that night, she was killed by a drunk driver on Ryan Road.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Thank you. And it changed my entire outlook on life. Like, I mean, if you've been through something that traumatic, it changed instantly, especially knowing I was invited to be with her that night.
Yep.
And it's like, oh my gosh, if I would have been there, neither of us would be here.
You were a decision away?
It was a really decision away. And so, it was horrible. It was the guy's fourth offense. He survived. And it was that morning, I didn't know that it happened that night. I was at a friend's party in Greenfield and I went home, went to bed, woke up that morning, I'm in the bathroom and I'm putting in my contacts because it's Christmas Eve.
Yeah.
You know, like we're getting ready to go to grandma's house and do the whole thing and do church. And my dad's banging on the bathroom door and I'm a teenager, I'm 17, and I'm like getting annoyed with him. I'm like, Dad, I'm in the bathroom. Like I'm putting in my contacts. And I opened the door and I'll never forget the look on his face. Like I knew something really bad happened. And he came in there and he said to me, he's like, Jenny was in a car accident last night. And I'm just like, okay. And he goes, and she didn't make it. And like the rest of it was just, you know, just a blur. It's like, it was horrible. It was horrible. It was horrible, especially when you lose someone.
Well, that young in the process, in the moment. I mean, you know, bless the people that, you know, I've been blessed to meet in my past that have passed on. I think that's just one thing that you're never truly ready for.
No.
You know?
No.
And it's created, well, I mean.
And that changed
yeah,
my whole outlook
for sure
on life, for sure, in that moment. And that's where dealing with survivor guilt, realizing my mortality, it is in the forefront of my mind. I mean, I think about her every day, and that's not even a joke. Like every day I think about her, you know? And I think of these decisions I've made in my life, and I think about she's not here. So a lot of what I do in honor of her
honor,
but also I feel like I have a lot of faith, and I just think, okay, God, I wasn't there that night. There's maybe a reason why I'm still here. Yeah. So the time I am here, use it wisely.
Yeah.
So to answer your question, when you talk about what did you learn, I just remember looking at life and thinking, I'm going to try to take advantage of every opportunity I get.
Yeah.
And I'm going to really try to, it sounds cliche, but live life to the fullest, because I realize that every day is a gift. And I have people in my life that sometimes think like, oh, you think about death too much, or you talk about death. I just know that we're a breath away from it happening. And so that's why my decisions and things that I do, I think about, she's not here, I'm going to do that in honor of her. Because like she was my person. And we were going to go through this life together, and now we're not. And so that's what made me go after the dream job, take some of the risks, do the trips, make those kinds of decisions because of that. And so I was really, really going through college, I was grieving, but I was also having an incredible time with life as well.
It created a lot of wisdom. And, you know, she's looking down right now. You know, like you said, you have plenty of faith. And I'm very sure she's looking down proud of what
she's
you've
with
become.
me for sure. And I learned through that too, that the people that we love do live on in our hearts. And that's a direct quote from her. That's something she had said. Yeah. And it's true. Like, it's really, really true. But then it also is a way of trying to embrace those that you have here. Because I spent some time being really angry. Okay. And Christmas was hard. Yeah. And again, that survivor guilt. And then finally, I just was sitting there thinking, she doesn't want me to be like that. Yeah. Like, that's not what she wants. And so enjoy the people that are here and don't miss out on time with them just because I'm sad that I'm missing her.
Yeah. So now you're in college and you've gone through. What inspired the decision to pursue broadcasting and radio?
Well, I was in school for public relations and advertising and communications. It was kind of a package deal. And I was at a concert with FM 106, the country station here in town. I was at this show with my friend Maggie, and there was this woman that walked out on stage, and she was giving away T-shirts. She was talking about how she was backstage with Lone Star. Listen, Monday morning, you could win a trip. And I looked at my friend, and I looked at the woman on stage, and I said, who's that? And she said, oh, that's Karen D'Alessandro. She does the morning show on FM 106. And I said, I want her job. And then Monday, I went into my counselor and I said, hey, I know this degree is kind of PR and everything, but because I didn't know about the broadcasting portion of this department. And she said, well, you can't do radio. We don't have a radio program. We have a TV program. And I said, all right, well, then I want to get into TV, but I really want to be at the radio station. I want to work in the radio station. And she was sort of a little hands off and said, we can't do a whole lot about that. I thought, oh gosh, it's got to be something we can do. So she changed my paperwork. I'm now going for television broadcasting. And then I'm in one of my classes and I'm telling my instructor, I said, I'm changing things up a little bit here. I'm going TV, but I want to do radio. I told her about Karen at FM 106. She then tells me there's a lab monitor down the hall. Because back then, we didn't just have our own personal computers. You had to go to the actual computer lab. There's a lab monitor that worked for that radio company. She said, go talk to him. They have stations in there that he works for, so he would know the country station. So I went in and I talked with this guy, and I cannot remember this guy's name because it was a really brief encounter I had with him. I said, hey, I would like to get in contact with people at FM 106 to see how I can intern there. And he said, yeah, no problem. They're always looking for interns. So he puts me in contact with their producer, Radar.
Wow.
So I emailed this guy named Radar, and I said, hey, I'd like to intern. And he said, yeah, sure, come in for an interview. Well, that was easy. So I go back to my guidance counselor, and I said, hey, I think I might be interning at this radio station. And she told me, she said, oh, well, we don't have paperwork for that. Your degree is for TV. So you won't get credit for this internship because it has to be through television. And I thought, all right. So what I did, I went back to my roommate who has some graphic design experience. And she made a fake form for me.
Yes.
She made a fake form and we signed it, made up name, this whole thing. And I go into the radio station and I have my manila folder with this fake form. And I am a rule follower, Xavier. I really am. But I knew I wanted this internship. And they weren't going to give me the internship if I wasn't getting credit. And my school just said I couldn't get credit for it because at the time, the curriculum was all focused on television broadcasting.
Yeah.
So I'm interviewing, like you and I are sitting here with Radar.
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, okay, we'll have you Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, 6 to 9 a.m. on the morning show. Do you have something I should sign? And I slide this fake paper across to Radar. And he was like, looks good. Signs it, gives it back to me. And I'm feeling like I committed the biggest crime ever.
Yeah.
Like cops are going to come in or something like that. And I just looked at him and said, all right, cool, thanks.
Yeah.
And it worked. So I interned for FM 106, Karen, Scott, and Radar for a whole semester. I wasn't getting any college credit for it. I was just doing it for free.
Yeah.
And then they wanted me to come back next semester, and then I had to be a little forthcoming because I thought I need to start making some money here. Like I was working at Victoria's Secret, I was DJing weddings, and I was also a fitness instructor at the fitness center at UWM.
Gotcha.
Because I had to pay for school. So I had to make money and I was doing full-time school. And I just said, I really need to be able to start making some money. And then they found that out and they're like, well, we'll start paying you.
Yeah.
So then they started to pay me. But Radar, that's when I met him.
That's cool that he's so rooted in your story.
Oh my God, he's one of my mentors.
Yeah.
He's one of my coaches. I am where I am because of him. I mean, seriously, because of him. He believed in me. And even when I left and I went to Green Bay where I started full-time radio once I graduated, he always kept in contact with me. And I even said to him, I said, we should do a show together one day. Yeah. And he's like, yeah, maybe one day. And then now we've been together here at the Mix for 7 years. But yes, he's a huge part of my story. And I owe a lot to that guy, a lot to him. And so here we are.
Man, well, hey, man, everything happens for a reason, and it wasn't a mistake to get that form made. And so can we just do this for your friend, the real MVP? She did it. But that's awesome. What were type of barriers you faced starting out in with radio?
They did not want me to use my real name.
Oh my gosh! So what was the name?
Oh, I've had a lot of names.
What?
I've had a lot of names.
I'm here.
So when I started at FM 106, the boss said that Elizabeth was too long of a name, and I was 20 at this point. So who am I to say no? So my maiden name, my name is Elizabeth Ullenberg. That was my maiden name. Very long name, not really radio friendly.
Yeah.
So he shortened my name to Liz Berg.
Wow.
I was Liz Berg for a hot second, and I do not like the name Liz, and my mother does not like the name Liz. Nothing against a Liz, but I also grew up with a friend that was named Liz. So she was Liz and I was Elizabeth. That's just how we were. Yep. So I always say to people, if you're going to call me Liz, you might as well call me Mary, because both sound just as foreign to me and I won't respond. Because it's just not my name. Like I'm always, by the way, I'm very sensitive to people and names. So if I meet like a Matthew, I will say, do you want to go by Matthew or do you go by Matt?
Okay, got you. So because
I understand. Like, and when people just assume they can call you a nickname, I just don't get where that comes from.
Did your family give you when you were, did they mess with you when your name was Liz Berg? When they see you at party or holiday parties?
It was like maybe like a year that I was Liz Berg. Yeah. But my family nickname is Biff.
Biff.
Because my little sisters couldn't say Elizabeth, so they called me Wizabeth.
Wizabeth?
So that became Biff. And my son Brayson, who is technically my stepson, but he is my son, he calls me Biff. That's all he calls me is Biff. So I was Liz Berg. And then when I go up to Green Bay, where I'm working full-time up there, I told them, I said, I just don't want to be Liz Berg.
What radio station was that full-time in Green Bay?
That was 104.9.
104.9.
Yes, which is now a simulcast with a country. It was country. That was a country station. Now I think they're simulcasting out of Oshkosh and Green Bay. So that's where I started up there. When I went up there, they said, well, you can't be Elizabeth. It's too long of a name. And now I'm 22 years old. So I'm like, okay. So I was Holly Jordan.
Wow. Where did we go off route like this?
Where did that name come from? So here's where it came from. When I worked at the fitness center, there was a girl that worked out there all the time whose name was Holly, and people we sort of looked alike. Yeah. So sometimes they would joke I was Holly and she was Elizabeth. Yeah. And I love Michael Jordan.
Yep. Okay.
And so I was like, Holly Jordan. I tell my husband, I said, Michael Jordan is the first last name that I ever took. It was Jordan. Michael Jordan. And so Donald Driver, when he would come into the station with the sports station up in Green Bay, he would call me Hojo. And so the nickname was Hojo. Yeah. And then it got really confusing. You go out to a restaurant, you show someone your ID. It's like, who are you? What's your name? The whole thing. I did not like that I didn't have my first name. And so then when I came back to Milwaukee, which is home to me, and when I was offered the job here, I put my foot down. And I said, I need to be Elizabeth. Can I please just be Elizabeth? And my boss now, who jokes about how he was resistant to that, he says now, he's like, I can't see you as anything else but Elizabeth. Like, I can't see you as anything else. He recognizes it's your name. Like, it's who you are. I will say, though, that's a dying issue, because now kids, when they're born, immediately their parents are building their brands. They're getting social media accounts. They're getting their names out there as kids. So I feel like this changing of the names is such an old school way of thinking in broadcasting. Yeah. But I dealt with that. I dealt with being a woman in broadcasting and being taken seriously. There were
it's male dominated.
Yeah, for sure. And there were definitely some pigs in this industry too. I mean, they've really done a lot of cleaning that up. But I mean, any woman in this industry will recognize that because there's more men than women, sometimes you deal with some things, and it's not fun. And the Me Too movement, I think, really opened things up to what can happen in all kinds of industries. The
severity, I mean.
Yep, and taking those claims seriously. But I mean, I would also say too, just trying to get paid what you're worth. That's hard as well too. You've got to really prove yourself to get to that point.
Yeah. Well, radio, I've heard through the many host personalities that I've interviewed, it's very cutthroat.
You don't get into this for the job security, but you're never bored.
Yeah.
That's the best part about this job.
I mean, to me, when I see you got that, this is pretty much a dream job, man.
It is a dream job. It is. And I love it. And to be doing it in Milwaukee, I never thought I would be staying in Milwaukee when I moved back. I thought, okay, I'll come back for a couple years. My grandpa was dying of cancer. My parents were going through a divorce. And I just thought, we need to come back home. Let's come back home and figure some things out. And it was going to be just a 2-year plan. And I've been back home now for 16 years. And I wouldn't have it any other way. Yeah. I love home, but I didn't know that this was going to be the plan or the dream.
For sure.
And I have no complaints. It's really worked out.
Well, now you're back in Milwaukee. Now you're Elizabeth in Radar. Mm-hmm. Walk me through that first on-air experience with your name. Now it's your brand. Now, you take a sense of pride in this is who I am, and I get to share this with the world. What was that first on-air experience like?
It was the coolest thing ever to be on 99.1 The Mix. At the time, I was filling in for the female host on the show, and Kid O'Shea was the co-host here.
Yeah.
And Kid and I were doing the show together, and I was just filling in, and it was just surreal to think that my family is now listening to me as they're starting their day.
Yeah.
I was so excited about it. They were thrilled and proud, but it's also, this is a city that I love. I care about so deeply, and I know the people here are good people. And I was just so excited to be able to be a part of the city in a different way as a radio host. So it was a geek out. It was a total geek out. Well, and the first time I actually got to be on the air at FM 106, because they eventually took me to the overnight shift. That was my first ever on-air shift. I had gone to Hooters beforehand for some wings, and I was supposed to be sleeping before my shift because my shift was midnight to 5 a.m.
Yeah.
And I was laying in bed and I couldn't sleep. And Xavier, I was so nervous. I got myself my anxiety was really high, and I thought I need to call the boss and tell him he's made a mistake. I shouldn't be on the air. I'm not prepared. And I went into the bathroom and I threw up twice.
Oh, wow.
And I thought, I'm going to call him and tell him I can't do this. Because I was afraid I was going to fail in front of my family. I was afraid I was going to fail in my city. And I just was so nervous. Well, I never made that call.
Yeah.
And thank God I didn't, because the rest is history.
Here you are.
And I'm still here. But that was the first moment where it hit me. Oh my gosh, this is going to be my city where a lot of people are listening.
Yeah.
But now, I mean, it's an honor. It just is, because I understand the listeners, because I grew up here too. I'm raising a family here also. This is where my family lives, and this is where my home is. So it kind of, I forget sometimes what I do for a living. We'll be at Bucks games and things, and people will come up and say hi, and it'll be like, oh yeah, thanks, you listen on the radio. Because it's like, I'm at a Bucks game. I've been going to a Bucks game since I was a kid.
Yeah,
I've been going to Brewers games since I was a kid. This stuff I did normally, and now I forget, oh yeah, I'm in the community in a different way than just being a kid growing up in Bayview going to a Bucks game.
Oh, definitely.
So it's surreal, and I don't take it for granted. I always tell people, come up and say hi. Please come up and say hi.
Yeah. Well, now you're rooted in Milwaukee. 16 years, and 7 of those with Radar. How do you, with your show, with the 99.1, how do you form your shows, and just walk us through a daily routine coming into the station?
Well, I will say that 75% of the show is planned the day before.
Okay.
But we're always in contact with each other, and we have a working Google Doc that we have our show on. It's like, let's add this, let's add that. But we're observers of life, and that's what we bring to the show. We bring a lot of local content to people. We have a segment called What You Need to Know on the Go.
Yeah.
We don't really do news. And this started actually during COVID, because there was so much coming up with COVID that we needed to get out, but we didn't want to have, this is a COVID break. And there were things changing daily, as we all remember, and you remember that.
Yeah.
And so that's when we started that What You Need to Know on the Go segment. So it can be what's big that's happening right now in the city. When the RNC was in town, it was These are the lane closures that are happening. Here's the delays. Here's what you need to know if you're headed downtown. And then you go into more of a lifestyle part of here's how you can get free state fair tickets. So that segment we have to every morning adjust with what's the big, what you need to know on the go.
Yeah.
Then we have our 3 must-hear clips of the day. Well, we don't know what those are going to be the day before because it's whatever's happened in the last 24 hours.
For sure.
And then we have our relationship intervention segment every day where people send us messages. They've got an issue with someone in their life. Put it on the radio.
I love that segment.
And well, they're asking for advice.
Yeah.
And, people sometimes will stop me and say, I can't believe people are talking about it on the radio. I can't believe they're saying this stuff. These are people that really are just looking for honest opinions, because how many times do you have something going on in your life, but you can't go to your immediate family and friends because, one, it's either about them, or two, they're so close to it, you're not going to get that honest, just give it to me straight. What's your opinion? What do you think?
Yeah.
And then the next day they give us a follow-up. But we talk about our life. We talk about things that are going on in our life. We also try to touch on all the things everybody else is talking about. And that's how we plan the show. I mean, that's how it really works. And we get inspiration from so many of you and listeners and people on social media, which is great because they can immediately contact with us if they can't call in the morning.
Yeah.
And that's what keeps us going. That's how we plan it out.
Well, with such a massive audience, your show is well known in the community. What is most important in the way you connect with your audience?
Being real.
Yeah.
Being authentic.
Transparent. It
is. People see through that stuff. They really do. They see through that. And also just trying to put a positive energy out there. I recognize what it's like to drive into work or taking your kids to school and you're stressed with a million other things that are going on in your life. We try to keep it positive.
Yeah.
I mean, there's definitely a time and place when we need to have those serious conversations when there are things that happen close to home. Look what happened not that long ago with the Waukesha Parade tragedy.
Yes.
That was a morning where we needed to talk about that.
Yes.
We needed to talk all morning about that and have people call in because people wanted a place to go to express how they were feeling.
For sure.
But then there are certain mornings where there's horrible things that are happening in the world. But in a sense, if it's not necessarily affecting directly here in Milwaukee, we will gloss over that and we'll talk about other things that can put you in a good mood and try to entertain you. But that's what we're here for. We're here for entertainment and we're here for information.
Yeah. Have you ever received any type of feedback that has impacted the show significantly to the point where it's kind of shaped a direction you guys were going? Because it's how much would you say you're forming the show? Are you ready to have it set in place? We
do plan on the fly.
Okay.
There'll be times, I mean, if this is more what you're looking, to answer your question, there will be times that we'll have a conversation. Let's say we're talking about relationship intervention and we have our calls and then we think, oh, we've moved on. And then perhaps someone else calls in and says, hey, I'm going through that same thing that they're going through right now. Put them on the air. Let's talk about it. And then it almost turns into people are supporting that person and what that person is going through. So whatever we have on the show doesn't look the same way when it started to how it ended.
Gotcha.
Because we do need to adjust based on what the feedback is from other people. Or you get ideas in the middle of a conversation and you're thinking, oh, we got to talk about that now.
And that's what I mean, like the way you adapt as the show goes.
We adapt a lot. We adapt a lot because you need to get a pulse of what your audience is feeling and what they are connecting with. And you realize when there are those opportunities where it's like, okay, we need to scrap whatever it is we were going to be talking about. We need to talk about this. Because you just get a feeling. You just get a sense of there's more to discuss here. We got to play some music.
Yeah.
We got to play our commercials, but then we're going to come back and talk about whatever other topic is starting to pick up and take off, and we run with that. And I mean, and I would say that maybe happens like a real, like, let's go long on some of these conversations.
Yep.
Maybe once or twice a week where it really goes that long and that in depth. But I mean, for the most part, it is pretty structured of when we're going to be talking about certain things, and we just kind of change what the topic is at the time.
What have been highlights or milestones for you throughout this journey?
That's such a big question. I would have to say using this platform for good is what I'm most proud of. In my time on this earth, there's been a lot of major things that have happened in my life that I've brought to the radio, discussing fertility issues and my miscarriage and how that's connected with women and how that has opened up conversations with women to feel like it's a place to talk about what they're going through. Also, I would say being a kidney donor, since I'm a kidney donor, talking about that. And we've helped people find kidneys now. And we've brought to the attention of people of kidney health and taking care of yourself and doing screening and what are the signs.
Bless you, by the way.
Oh,
Bless
thank you. That was it was for my mother-in-law, something I never thought I'd ever be doing, but I'm really proud of that. And then now most recently, going through all these preventative surgeries that I went through because of breast cancer hitting my family and realizing that we have this gene mutation called BRCA2.
Okay.
And now I have that gene mutation, which means I'm very high risk for breast cancer. So all last year, I went through these preventative surgeries, the bilateral mastectomy, the reconstructive surgery, had the ovaries and the fallopian tubes taken out, and now talking about those risks and hearing from women that are scheduling their mammograms, that are doing this genetic testing, that are taking these measures. That is what I'm most proud of with this job, is that these conversations are saving lives.
Yeah, it's being proactive. It's getting ahead, like in the best way you can, because you never know when you're gonna go in and, something shows up on the X-ray that is unexpected. It's definitely, health is a big thing for you and the listeners, and because you have a very close relationship. You could tell when when the radio show is going on how connected you guys are, you and Radar. With the existing audience that you have right now, how do you engage? How do you feel you engage new type of audience to bring on?
Well, we always like to think about the fact that we don't want to have there be so many inside jokes that if you're just listening to us, you don't understand it. You don't know what we're talking about.
For sure.
And so there's little formatic things that we do. Like there'll be times I'm talking to Radar and I will say, Radar, what do you think of XYZ? I will say his name. If I talk about my husband, I'll say my husband, Eric, my son, Brayson. Give them a title, give them a name. So anybody listening to the show could turn on the show at any point in time and know exactly who we're talking about. Because in Milwaukee, the average time people are listening is about 20 minutes.
Okay.
So we have to make sure we constantly reset what we're talking about, who are we talking to, so that people can always feel like they're a part of the party.
Yeah.
Because if you feel left out, you're going to tune out.
For sure.
And the biggest thing too is we want to be reliable but not predictable. So we want to be that consistent voice for people, but not so predictable they're like same thing every day.
Yeah.
And I will say that social media is huge. To try to reach a younger audience, it's social media. So we'll put up on our social media maybe an audio clip of what we did that day, tease the giveaway for the next day, to try to get that audience so people can be listening to us. But then also being out in the community.
Yeah.
emceeing events, being at parades, charity events, being out at Summerfest State Fair, trying to build that brand awareness so we can bring in new listeners as well. And hopefully they have a positive interaction with us whenever that time comes that we're out and about meeting new people.
Nice. How would you describe your work ethic?
Obsessive. It is. Yeah. I mean, this in a lot of ways is, people say I'm not what I do. I feel like I am. This is me. This is who I am. And I'm constantly trying to get better. I listen to shows all across the country to get inspired and get ideas. I have mentors. We work with a coach. I always want to get better all the time, and I'm thinking about it all the time, thinking about the show.
Yeah.
What could we add to the show? Is this a good topic for the show? Is this something we should be bringing up on the show?
Yeah.
And so I just become obsessed with it. I take a lot of pride in my work and what I do, and I have other avenues and other jobs and things that I do as well because I just really enjoy it and I love it. And I also recognize I'm in an industry where there's a shelf life.
Yeah.
I compare it to sports a lot of times. I mean, do you hear a lot of 65-year-old women waking up people on a hot AC station in the morning?
Yeah.
Not really.
No,
really. It's true. I mean, I'd love to be the one to say, I'm going to break that barrier. Maybe that will happen, perhaps. But I'm well aware of the fact that I have a shelf life.
Yeah.
And so I need to constantly be learning new things to stay relevant and keep networking because there may be a point that a change will be made, whether it's their choice or my choice.
Yeah.
But I want to have other options and other opportunities of things that I can do. And that's not to be negative. I accept that that's the way this industry is.
Yeah.
It is always evolving, but that's why we can't be so abrasive to change. We have to embrace the change because it's going to happen either way.
Yeah. Well, with this career, since you've began, I'm pretty sure there's been a lot of changes. How do you feel radio has evolved since you've began your journey with it?
Now we've embraced the digital platforms. We recognize that a lot of people plug their phones into the car and that's how they're listening to their music. And so we're really adamant about promoting our app and how you can listen on the app. And there's all different benefits of doing that. And that's what we're trying to make sure that we can reach people, that it's not just turning on a radio. Now the radio's on the phone. The music's on the phone. So I give our company a lot of credit. They've invested a lot into that. And we have one of the fastest growing apps as well. And so that is where our company is learning to adapt.
Yeah. Well, with radio, it's live. How do you handle that pressure? And have you ever had a live broadcast go wrong? And how did you manage to get through?
Did we hit the dump button? I was saying, can we swear on this podcast?
Feel it.
It really goes back to just being present. Just being present. That's how you forget about how many people could be listening at any given moment. There are people I've met in this industry that can talk to hundreds of thousands of people. You get them face to face with two people and they can't do it. There's a magic of being in the studio, having the headphones on like we have, hearing your voice back, that it can become very intimate. And then when you take that wall away and you realize there's people out there, some people can really freak out about it. Yeah. For someone like myself, I never get nervous in situations like that. I just don't. I was a performer when I was a kid. I was public speaking since I was a kid. So I just was able to turn that nerves into excitement. And I can just channel that and do that. But what I will say is when there are things that maybe can get stressful or things can go wrong, I always tell myself, don't reinvent the wheel. Keep it simple, stupid. Go back to the basics.
Yeah.
Go back to the basics. And one of the things I do on the side is I'm a communications coach, and I work with professionals and executives all over the country. Internationally, I have a client in Mexico, actually. I work on their public speaking skills and their presenting. And one of the biggest things I talk about is your breath. Go back to your breath. When we get nervous, we take shorter breaths. We start speaking from here. We start talking faster. Yeah. Go back to your breath.
Okay.
Just deep breaths. Think of meditation. Think of yoga. I mean, it's been proven time and time again. Deep breathing can relax you. So those are things that I do sometimes if I'm feeling like this is getting crazy. But there was a moment that happened where, and I don't know if you want me to say the word.
Go ahead.
I figured I could.
Yeah.
But this was 2020. This was the height of the George Floyd civil unrest. And it was a really stressful and chaotic time for a lot of people. And our company at this point said, you guys talk about it. And thank goodness, because we wanted to talk about it. Talk about it, have the interviews, have the conversations. And we were talking to Ed Lover. I hope I get his name right. Ed Lover, our sister station down in Chicago. So it was Ed Lover. It was 2020. Again, all the civil unrest that had been going on with George Floyd. And we were having these interviews. And Ed Lover is one of our radio hosts down in Chicago. And he is a black man. And he was speaking to us about this impact on the black community. And he was talking about how his brother is a cop. And so he was just saying the whole conflict of he's pro-police, but he's a black man. And at the time, that was a little controversial. I mean, you lived it. You remember what this was.
For sure.
And I read to him a message we received from a listener. And this is a listener who, she was a retired police officer and her husband was a police officer in the community. And she said, I just can't wait for this, quote, shit show to end.
Wow.
And I read that to him and I said, what do you think about that? Now this interview, because Ed Lover was doing interviews all over the country, this was taped about 20 minutes before we were going to air it. So I said it thinking this will get bleeped or this will get taken out. Well, again, there was so much going on. I mean, we lost our producer during this time. It got missed and it didn't get edited out.
Oh.
And so we're on the air and all of a sudden it gets said and it's like, oh my gosh. And we didn't hit the dump button in time, and it got out.
Yeah.
So we got written up.
Yeah.
And we had to go through a whole training of how the dump button works.
Yeah.
But I stand by it was a very real conversation. It was a very emotional, passionate conversation.
It needed to happen. Though.
And that's what yes, when you hear everything that went on, and of course, I felt bad, and we didn't get any complaints and nothing like that. Mm-hmm. But I was needing to convey to him, hey, what do you say to people that are saying that about this situation? Yeah. And his response was great, and it was just so there was that moment.
Well, with radio, this has an impact. As you brought up, you're a coach, a communications coach.
Yeah.
Outside of this, what other things? How has radio impacted your life outside of the business, and what type of things like communication? Being a communication coach, do you have your hands in?
Well, this business and having my own coach has helped me tell a story.
Yeah.
How can you tell a story or sell a product or get your point across in a short period of time? And it takes practice. Mm-hmm. It takes practice. Eliminating those details that don't matter. Yeah. I always say to people, if you feel like you tell a good story and you can't think of anybody that tells a bad story, well, maybe you're that person. Maybe you are, but we all know those people that go on and on and on and on. Mm-hmm. But also how to keep the attention of your audience.
Yeah.
How do you do that? Empathy.
Yeah.
That's what we learned in radio, and that's what I teach my clients. Empathy. Lead with empathy. What is your audience thinking, feeling, and doing?
Okay.
And it's an exercise where you actually write down, okay, who's in the room? Who's listening to your podcast? Yeah. What are these people like? What are they thinking, feeling, and doing? And then you ask yourself, what do they need from you? Mm-hmm. And what do you need from them?
Yeah.
And how do you get that? And so that, when I talk to people about how if you want to have charisma and you want to bring people in, you have to understand the people. You have to have that empathy for them. Mm-hmm. It isn't about me. It's about them. What's the payoff for them?
Yeah.
And that's really the heart of it.
Yeah, I've been doing this, and I've said this in another interview before. I can't remember which one, but growing up, I always wanted to be the center of attention, and it's crazy to think that I've started this whole, a platform, and it has nothing to do with being about me, and it has everything to do with you, my guest, and so many others. I feel like what I do right now, and I could even say I would feel that you'd feel the same. It's a therapy. It's a therapy to be able to relate to people, to be able to talk to people. What do you feel is most challenging about what it is you do?
I would say when life is getting really heavy and hard behind the scenes, when big major things are happening, it is sometimes hard to get on the air and crack a smile and act like everything is great, because there's definitely a time and place for those conversations. Yeah. I mean, I can remember going through a divorce, and I'm doing a radio show, and it was not the time to discuss the divorce, because I feel like the divorce would have gotten crazier. Like, it just wasn't the time. And it's like you have to sometimes process what you're going through in real time before you're ready to bring that out to the air. Yeah. I also have to say, one of the challenges too is, this is my hometown, so my family and friends, for better or for worse, they're a part of a lot of these stories. And a lot of those people didn't ask to have personal stories be told publicly. Yeah. And I am someone that's very sensitive to that. I know a lot of people in this industry that are like, whatever, my show, my mic, my stories, I can tell whatever I want. Yeah. That's not me. Because I don't really like to have those conversations when I am with those family members where they're like, hey, I didn't appreciate you said X, Y, Z, or I didn't want that story out there. Like, I have family members that Milwaukee doesn't even know about. Yeah. Because I have been told those people do not at all want to be mentioned on social media or on the radio. And that's their right. That's their right. There's a lot of little kids in the family. And, when you get into the public arena, people can be mean. People can be judgmental. And some of these young kids in our family, they don't have a say if they're 7, 8 years old or whatever their age is.
For sure.
And I recognize that. And I never, ever, ever want the joke or the story to be at someone I love's expense.
Okay, got you. Yep.
You know what I mean? And I will say, even being in a blended family, I have a stepson. He has a whole other side of the family, and they have certain rules and things that they don't want to be talked about. I get that. Mm-hmm. That can be a challenge at times, because there's moments where it's like, oh my God, I got the best story, or something just happened. But it's like, nope, I respect these people's boundaries, and I need to make sure that I continue to respect that, because I don't ever want to play dirty.
Yeah.
I don't want to ever play dirty. And that can be a challenge at times.
How do you feel Milwaukee is attributed to your success?
The grit.
The grit. I love that. I love that answer.
Yeah,
and I say the same thing. Like,
yeah, working really hard.
Yeah.
I came from a working family, a blue collar family, growing up in Bayview, and I just always say that people in Milwaukee work hard and we love deeply. Deeply. And I just feel like if you love us, we're going to love you tenfold. Look at what happened with Giannis. He came here with his whole family. Yep. And look at how we feel like he's ours. Yep. We love him. We have this pride that he grew up here with us and he's part of us. Mm-hmm. He's an incredible basketball player. Absolutely. Yeah. But we love him as a human being too. Mm-hmm. And that's what I got from Milwaukee. And I always say, people here ask how you're doing and they really want to know. Yeah. They really want to know. And we want people to be real. Mm-hmm. That's what I got from Milwaukee.
That's awesome. What legacy do you hope to leave when it's all said and done? You said it was a shelf life. What legacy do you hope to leave when that time comes?
That I brought a smile to people's faces, but also that I was able to show how important it is to help other people.
Yeah.
I mean, I go back to the kidney donation and now all this advocacy work that I'm doing for women that are dealing with breast cancer and trying to be an advocate for women's health. That's what I hope people will remember, and to see, look, when you care and do something for other people, you get a lot back in return too. Mm-hmm. But it's about being a part of something bigger than yourself. Yeah. Leroy Butler, who is a friend of mine, he used to work here on our sports station, the Hall of Famer, former Packer, Lambeau Leap founder. Leroy Butler is always involved with our Stuff the Bus broadcast, which is our big food drive we do with Feeding America Eastern Wisconsin right before Thanksgiving. And he said how his mom raised him to make sure you do good for strangers. And she told him, she said, it's so easy to help out people you know. Yeah. It says more about who you are as a person when you help someone you don't know. Yeah. And I just think that's so true. And I love that.
It's we live a life where you talk about grit, Milwaukee being gritty. It can get cold. It get cold during those winters. I'm someone who's been homeless, and I've come a long way since then. But I wouldn't have been able to survive the way I was if it weren't for strangers.
People helping.
People, you know what I mean? Some family, some strangers. But and that's the beauty of Milwaukee, I really feel that. I really do. It's this type of unifying sense. Do you feel with your advocacy with women and you being such a pillar, that there's any type of career outside of radio when it's all said and done?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. I mean, there's a lot of causes I'm passionate about. And again, I have this PR degree as well. Mm-hmm. And I always feel like if I'm going to do any kind of work, I have to really love the work and care about what it is. Yeah. And so whether that's going the public relations route and being a PR person for a company, or even working, again, continuing to work with professionals and their communication skills, I'm really passionate about that. Yeah. I'm really passionate about it because my biggest thing I say to a lot of my clients is, you may be the smartest person in the room, but if you can't sell yourself or sell your product, it's going to be lost. Mm-hmm. So you need to know how to do that elevator pitch. Yeah. It's like media training. You need to know how to speak in front of the camera. You need to know how to sell yourself on social media. You have to think of yourself as a business. What's Jay-Z's line? I'm not a businessman. I'm a businessman. We have to think of ourselves like that. Yeah. Your name is your brand. What is your reputation? What are you putting out there? What is the story that people are saying or telling themselves about you when they first meet you in the first 5 seconds? Yeah. What's your first impression? These are all the things that I work on. And I see myself doing a lot more of that as well in the future.
We always work ourselves up to this question. What advice would you give to aspiring youth that are looking to fall into this line of work, and just our youth in general?
Ask questions. Don't be afraid to reach out to people, and don't let fear get in your way. This past spring, I was given the opportunity to do the commencement speech at my alma mater, St. Thomas More High School.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And my nephew was graduating that year in the class, which was pretty exciting. And I talked about that story I told earlier about how I threw up
Yeah.
the night I was supposed to do my first radio show, and I was going to call the boss and say, I can't do this. I can't do this. And as I was driving in to work, I'm listening to the radio. And as I'm pulling into the radio station, Eminem's Lose Yourself started playing.
Nice.
And I turned it up, and I'm literally feeling like those words are speaking to me. You have one shot, one opportunity to seize everything you've ever wanted. I mean,
Yeah.
I made the joke. I didn't throw up mom's spaghetti. I threw up wings from Hooters. But I think about that moment, and I look at life very cinematically. I like to associate music with memories. And I remember thinking, I'm in this moment. This song is playing for me. I need to hear this song and what this song is saying. And I thought, all right, well, here we are. Let's go for it. I think about, if I hadn't said yes, what would I be doing now? But also getting back to this advocacy work and lives that we are saving with some of these messages that I'm talking about. None of that would happen. Literally, my husband right now and my son, I would have never met if it wasn't for this business. Like, everything would be totally different. Because when I talk to people about with radio is not just about playing your favorite song and making you laugh. Radio is about community, and it is about connection. And that connection is what people want. And that is something that I was able to get out of this job, but also to put back out into the world. And that's why when I say to young kids, whatever excites you, whatever it is that you are passionate about, go for it. Like, quitting is not an option. I had a roommate make a fake document for me because I knew this is what I want to do. This is what I'm supposed to do. Use your gifts. Use your gifts to make the world a better place. Don't deprive us of your gifts. That's what it's all about. That's what it's about. And that's what I feel is everyone's one job. Like, think of all the people that you look up to or idolize. Maybe they're famous, maybe they're not, maybe they're people in your life, they're your family members. What is it about them that you admire? Think about the people that have gone after it. So that's why I say, ask questions, talk to those people, and don't let fear get in your way. Don't. The plan may change and the dream may change, and you'll know when that's the right time to make that decision. Do not let fear stop you. Think of all the famous people out there, young kids that you love. If they would have said, like, I don't know if I want to do it, because they've all faced rejection, they've all faced adversity, but thank God they went after it, because now we're inspired. Now we have the music. Now we have the movies, the clothes, the sports. We have all this inventions. Think of all these things we have because people didn't stop. They chased the dream. I'm living proof it is possible. That's my advice.
Man, and with that, I'm just going to do this real quick. She is in the building. That was powerful.
You have to go after it. You know, even with this podcast. You have to go after it. I was telling you, Xavier, before we sat down, that I love reading memoirs and I get really inspired, not because of the success these people have achieved, how they've overcome the adversity to get the success. That's where you pull the inspiration from.
That's how this came about. I've always, I went through a journey of sobriety, and through that, it's during COVID, having to self-reflect, like, we have this moment where we were stuck in place, but it gave a lot of time to think, what direction of life am I going into? And I just, when you take a step back and you really think about what you want to do, this is what came about.
And say yes.
And
say yes. Say yes to the opportunities. Even when you're scared to death, even when you think, I'm not qualified, it's baptism by fire.
It's
say yes.
It's honestly been, I shot my shot, and I haven't stopped yet, and I don't, consistency and just a type of dedication, knowing that, I could connect with others that are like me on different levels from all different type of walks of life. But I truly appreciate you coming on here. I truly appreciate you being a part of my journey.
Oh, I'm so excited to talk with you. So thank you for letting me be a part of the journey. And you keep up the great work and what you're doing, because you're giving people a platform to share their stories.
Yeah.
And those stories connect us and they inspire us, and we learn from stories.
Yeah.
So thank you for giving me the chance to tell mine.
I do appreciate you. I appreciate the time you took out. So with that being said, Spearhead out.